Ugh, this room could use a breath of fresh air. Lightning, meet nature. Bolobo, master of nature, to Jay, the ninja of lightning. Hello, I'm Sensei the Dark Master, and welcome back to the Lore of Ninjago! And in today's installment of this series, we shall be continuing our coverage of the many elemental powers of Ninjago. This time we shall be covering the naturalistic element of nature. We shall be discussing the element's history, those people, creatures, and objects that have wielded this power, the powers and abilities it grants a user, its weaknesses, colors, and much, much more. The origins of the element of nature start like that of most other elemental powers, with the first Spinjitzu master, who then taught the power of nature to an individual who would become known as the first elemental master of nature. He or she would then pass this power to his or her child, who then proceeded to pass it on to their child in a process that repeated for over 100 generations. Eventually, the elemental power came to an individual who goes by the name Bolobo, who unlocked his true potential at some point before the series began and thus became the current elemental master of nature. Bolobo would be invited to join the Tournament of Elements, held by the evil Master Chen. Meeting the ninja and the other elemental masters at Ninjago City docks, he was taken to the charlatan Shen's island via his ferry, helped by the evil sorcerer Klaus. Bolobo would use his element of nature to attack Jay during the first round of the tournament, seeking a Jade Blade so that he would not be eliminated, and managed to safely make it to the next round, despite Jay escaping his wrath. During the next day, we would see Bolobo watching Gravis, the elemental master of gravity, fight against Griffin Turner, the elemental master of speed, during the second round of the tournament. We would then see Bolobo, the elemental master of nature, fight Neuro, the elemental master of mind, which is an element I've made a whole lore video about, which I suggest you go watch if you want to learn more about that element in particular. Bolobo initially has the upper hand due to the far more physical nature of his element in contrast to mind, but in the end he's given severe brain pain by Neuro and is defeated as the Master of Mind is able to get the Jade Blade, and as such Bolobo is eliminated. He would then be dropped down a chute and be stripped of his elemental power of nature by Master Chen and then forced into slavery in Shen's noodle factory as an unpaid worker. Eventually, however, Cole, who was also captured, would come up with a plan that allowed Bolobo and the other elemental masters to escape. Chen attempted to use his magic to transform his cultists into unstoppable Anaconda warriors, but was successfully paused when Kai destroyed the Staff of Elements, causing the elemental power of nature as well as the others to return to their previous owners. Bolobo would then use his powers to help round up the remaining cultists and even used vines to destroy the ferry. But it's all for naught as Chen kidnaps his own daughter and uses her to transform his cult into unstoppable Anaconda warriors, which overwhelm the elemental masters and ninja before leaving the island, stranding the would-be heroes. However, thanks to Zane's advice, Bolobo manages to overcome his fear and summon an elemental dragon of nature to leave the island. Bolobo would then use his elemental power in the Battle of the Corridor of Elders during the Second Anaconda War, and managed to hold off the cult long enough for Garmadon to perform the ultimate sacrifice, which caused the cultists, including Chen, to be banished into the Cursed Realm. Belobo would celebrate this victory, and the elemental master of nature promised to aid the ninja in the case of any future threats to Ninjago. Sadly, during the events of Skybound, he didn't really help much, as he and most of the other elemental masters were tricked by Nadakon, and thus imprisoned within the Jin Blade, alongside his element, which Nadakon, even though he had the ability to, didn't really use. He was also mentioned alongside his element in Ninjago Decoded, when the ninja were trying to help Zane, who was in a coma. Belobo and the element of nature would appear in Hunted, but did not really help much due to being captured early on by Lord Garmadon and his biker gang cult, the Sons of Garmadon, in one of their Ultra Hunts. He did end up escaping, however, during the Cryptarium prison when he and the others were inspired to fight back and escape thanks to the ninja returning, but sadly didn't really help much against the bikers revolutionaries. Then we see that we come to the end of this element's history. Now, let's go over those who have wielded this frankly amazing power. First, of course, there was the first Spinjitzu master. Then there was the individual known as the first elemental master of nature. And most recently in this lineage, there is the current elemental master of nature, Belobo, who is interestingly enough named after a town in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Less well known is that via the Staff of Elements, Chen and Kai had this power, even if only temporarily. Skylar also wielded this power thanks to her own element, which is quite OP, Amber, which is one that I've already done a full-length video of if you want to learn more about that. Nadakon could also technically wield the power, but didn't do so thanks to his possession of the Jin Blade. Perhaps the most obscure of all is there's also the wizard Cardizinto, who once fought against Sensei Wu and used magic that was very similar to the element of nature, basically controlling plants. But it's completely uncertain as to whether this is actually related to the elemental power of nature or if it's just a very specific branch of dark magic. In terms of creatures, only one has wielded the elemental power of nature, that being the elemental nature dragon, which is an elemental construct that resembles a spiny translucent green dragon, with prominent spikes and can breathe well nature. In terms of objects that have wielded, there have been three that have had this power. First, there was the Staff of Elements, constructed out of chronosteel and blue crystal, which on their own can absorb one element, but when combined can absorb multiple of them. The Jin Blade can also wield this power after absorbing the soul of an elemental master of nature. The driftwood bowstaff, utilized by Belobo, also has this power which allowed him to enhance his own powers of nature. But now that we've covered all these objects and creatures, let us discuss the powers that they grant upon a user. The first and primary power is that of chlorokinesis, also called ecokinesis. With this power, the user can control plants, including vines, and parts of plants, such as leaves, roots, and seeds, for a variety of purposes, which include blocking attacks from antagonists, trapping foes, or to create an escape route if you are losing a battle. They can also connect, communicate, influence, manipulate, and blend in with nature, allowing them to control all living things and natural phenomenon. It may also be possible for some users to command plant-based creatures. Via plant growth, a user can grow plants from the ground to create traps or accelerate the growth of plants already planted in order to cause some benefit. Via chlorogenesis, the user can generate plants, such as vines, to entrap enemies. With dragon creation, a user, after overcoming their greatest fear, can summon the elemental nature dragon. This dragon allows them to fly through the air with great speed. This element is associated with the colors jade and green, but sadly doesn't have a canon symbol due to Bilobo not possessing one. In terms of weaknesses, the element of nature, due to its plant-based nature, is highly flammable and thus highly susceptible to fire. Also, it is uncertain whether this nature would be very effective in a place that is mostly devoid of life, such as, say, the underworld or the desert. Also, the dragon disappears if one is overwhelmed by powerful enough fear. Overall, what in the end can be learned from this element of nature? Well, we learn that nature is not something to be underestimated, and that it must be given the proper amount of respect, lest it overgrow us to our doom. That we must learn to speak to the plants, for while they may not have vocal cords, they have quite a lot to say to us about the nature of man. I am Sensei the Dark Master. Join me next time on The Lore of Ninjago. Have a great day and subscribe if you like these types of videos. Peace out.